Welcome back from the break, guys. Joining me in the studio today is Fatima Sibai, a registered psychologist with New South Wales and also working in the prison system. And I have Muhummed Shah Idil, who's a mental health advocate and is very interested in this field. Welcome to the studio, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, guys, so as you know, it was Are You OK, the national campaign last Thursday, and this campaign was about raising awareness of mental health issues that people actually face but they're silent about, and it's actually kind of seen as taboo. Now, obviously, what I wanted to speak about today was mental health in relation to the Muslim community, and the Muslim community, as we know, is very diverse from different backgrounds, and these people include migrants, they include first generation Australians, and they include converts, right? But the Muslim community in general, health issues are kind of seen as taboo in our community, and they're kind of seen as two approaches. The first approach is just get over it, and you'll only get a psychologist if you're crazy and there must be something going on with you. Or the second is extreme, is like if someone's just having a bad day, people dramatize it to the extent that, oh my god, you're bipolar, go get help and things like that. And it's really sad because this dichotomy isn't helping those who suffer from mental illness. Earlier this year, there was 2 suicides, Muslim suicides, and it was really tragic because these people were in high school. So this is the context. So I just wanted to get your views on this. So Fatima, as a mental health profession, do you feel like this is the case with Muslims and even like minority groups? Do they have this perception that mental health is a taboo topic?
I think definitely it is very taboo, mostly among males than it is amongst females, especially because society places such a massive role on how to raise females and males from a very young age. So if you look back at how parents raise their children, females will, if a female falls down, she has a scratch on her knee or something, the mother will rush over, oh darling, are you okay? Yep. And sort of, nurse the wound and, put a band-aid on it and, all that sort of, very nurturing sort of behaviours. Whereas if a male were to fall down, they'd be like, oh, you're all right, son, get back up, And
that was nothing.
Get over it.
Yeah.
So early on, adults identify with roles that they give to younger children. So society shapes children into adults where females believe that, that they're more verbal creatures than males, and so they can talk to their best friends and they can talk to anyone and seek help, whereas males are told sort of to internalise it, be tough, just face it and, don't worry about it.
So obviously, even with females and males, like what you're speaking about, with females it's all right to kind of have this dramatic breakdown and just cry, but with males it's seen as like, what the hell's going on? So do you feel that's the case?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. There's definitely an expectation for men to be able to deal with their own issues internally. That's definitely true. I find more so with conservative and ethnic communities as well. There's a bigger expectation there. But that said, I think mental health in general is an issue which Australians all have very little knowledge about.
Fatima, speaking of the Australians and what they're facing, can you tell me some statistics generally in the population, or even more specifically if you do have, on what are we actually facing as Australians in terms of mental health?
Okay, well, the Australian Bureau of Statistics found, just in relation to suicide, in 2009 they conducted a research in which they found that 1.6% of the population is actually, the deaths are related to deliberate action of a person with an intention to take their own life. So that, from that figure, 80% of them were actually males, and it was very successful because research tends to suggest that males use a more violent way of committing suicide in comparison to females. So females are only 20% more successful than males are.
So that's
wow. That's a high, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's true. 1 in 4 Australians suffer from depression, well, if they're aged between 14 and 25, I think. So the incidence of mental health is actually quite high, and I think this is one issue which is making it harder for people with mental health issues to come out. To the everyday Australian, it seems like it's not a big problem because people aren't willing to come out, people aren't willing to talk about it, so it just makes it that much more difficult for people to actually admit and seek the help they need.
It's definitely true that the majority of people fall between the ages of 14 to 25, in which, you know, there's new technology now in which, you know, they can be exposed to cyberbullying and texting and phone messages and all sorts of, traumatizing things for young adolescents. And definitely I'd advise people to sort of seek, you know, even speak to your school counsellor. Anything can help you to, you know, if you just take the first step, there's always a reaching hand there.
The Yfactor.
Speaking of adolescence, with popular culture and with, you know, popular sentiments and stuff, this like trend of being emo or like depressed is very in. And because I volunteer at public high schools and stuff, and it's a given that once you're past probably year 9 and it's starting earlier and earlier and earlier, that you just have to be kind of like depressed and hate the world. And I know obviously that's a major part of growing up, like just hating everybody. But it's really scary when it does border on mental health issues and this concept of emo-ness.
It's definitely popular culture.
Yeah, definitely.
It's becoming a social norm to sort of dress that way, act that way.
Yeah.
Sort of, it's cool to have, you know, sort of black hair, I guess, and dress all black, and it does promote inside you kind of a very depressed, dark place. It's just natural to feel, I think.
Yeah, I think it's quite dangerous in the sense that it might mask actual symptoms that some students might have. I can think of one quite shocking experience that I saw when I was on the train. I saw a bunch of kids. They were basically mucking around, and there was one girl that seemed to be sort of on the fringe of the group, and I think it was a guy shoved her aside or said something quite rude to her, and I noticed that she branched off to the side of the carriage and pulled out her scissors and started to cut herself.
On the train?
Yeah, on the train, literally on the train. And I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. And all the other kids weren't aware of it. I mean, I guess you could put it to, oh, you know, cutting yourself is cool and whatnot, but
even the concept that cutting yourself is cool, seriously.
Yeah, so that's quite troubling in itself. So one, she might have been doing it because she thought it was the appropriate response, and another might be because that was the only way for her to release sort of pent-up emotions. And this culture is making it difficult to distinguish between the two, and for people, for her guardians and for herself to make a decision of whether or not she should seek help.
Yep.
So,
well, Fatima, if you do have bottled up sentiments, right? So, for example, that girl on the train, as a psychologist, like just broadly speaking, obviously there's, you know, each person is very, very different. But if you feel inside you're bottling up and there's negative sentiments you're feeling, what should you do about it?
Like I said, definitely seek help. If you're an adolescent, I'd advise to speak to a school counsellor or maybe a close teacher that you're, you know, sort of you feel that is kind enough and understanding enough to approach. Might be that, you know, the school coordinator might be taken into sort of the area which is being experienced by the child, as, you know.
But a lot of adolescents kind of see it as you're a traitor if you go in and, you know, like dob to the principal or something like that. Or, for example, if you see the counsellor at school, that's even more taboo than seeing a regular counsellor, because at school it's like, oh, the, you know, psycho kid is going to go see the counsellor. So do you have like practical steps of how people can deal with it, for example, before they can actually go and see?
Well, if you're sort of, you know, on self-harm, on the verge of self-harm or suicide, I think it's quite serious.
That's right, yeah.
I do definitely advise that they see a health professional.
Yeah. But before it develops to that stage, if they're just kind of negative and just like down all the time,
yeah, there's some practical steps that they can use. Some of them include sort of being social with your friends. So if
and that doesn't include your emo friends.
That's I was just about to say that. Just about to go on to that. If that social circle is very negative for them, I would definitely advise maybe someone or people outside that social circle. You can plan a date night with your friends. Having supportive relationship is key to building your resilience and strength. You can also end the day well by doing something that releases your tension. Could be a hobby or an interest, anything that you're passionate about. You need to ensure that you sleep well and you have a healthy diet and you maintain your exercise. So those things are sort of core to keeping your body healthy. there is research that suggests that lack of sleep leads to mental illness. So it's good to keep your
so get off Facebook and go to sleep.
Go to bed.
Yeah, go to bed.
Yeah.
Or even Facebook is good when it comes to chatting with friends, just to vent, just to release like your day's stresses. But the conversations that you have need to be sort of constructive, or you need to go to sleep.
Yep.
So,
and please chat in the chat section and don't put it as your statuses, because seriously, sometimes people that update their status like 600 times. It's like I'm emo.
Like, we don't want to know.
Yes.
Something good at the end of the day could be a reflection on your day. So everything good that happened and everything bad that might have happened, and just say to yourself, well, if with the bad things, what could I have done to make them better? And just a reflection process at the end of the night. Your memory tries to do that anyway, when it organises everything back into the black box that we call the subconscious. But just before that, you should just try to reflect on the day's events and just say, oh, well, maybe I could have done this better. Maybe I could have did this alternatively, or how can I fix it in the future if it were to happen again. So things like that. Also noticing something beautiful in the day can also help. Prayers, I say, are the most core thing to sort of allowing you to lead a more positive lifestyle.
It's all good to try and talk to someone if you're willing to, but a lot of the time, especially when it comes to men, they have this mental block of actually admitting to themselves that there's something wrong, or I'm not feeling completely peachy, that sort of thing. So I find that a lot of my friends as well, even if you ask them how they're doing, they'll just say, yeah, I'm okay, and they'll sort of brush it off, even though, say,
absolutely,
yeah, for example, they actually experienced something which was really stressful in their life. So I find, well, for myself, I find that if you sort of keep pushing but sort of within limits, it increases the likelihood that your friend might open up, because it gives them a sign that you're actually genuinely concerned about their well-being, as opposed to only asking because that's sort of the socially acceptable thing to do.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you have sort of a guy friend and you ask them how they're doing and they say, yeah, I'm okay, maybe it's worth, if you get the sort of body language that something might not be okay, to try and push the question again if the situation is appropriate.
And I think also with female or male, like I know, like sometimes, like with my brother or a dad or males I know, generally it's like the immediate reflex reaction when a woman asks what's wrong is like nothing, get lost, But I feel like when you kind of just like phrase the question in a different way, for example, be like, oh, is everything at work okay? Or if you know something is happening, be like, oh, what's the update on that? So if you kind of like target the question specifically, they stop getting so defensive.
Especially if you ask them open-ended questions rather than closed questions, because if you're asking them things like, did you have a good day? They only have a very limited
it's yes or no or get lost.
So if you ask them an open question like, how was your day, or how did that meeting go, or how how was the traffic today, or whatever, stuff like that. So just to get them to sort of open up slowly, and you don't want to pester them like with too many questions as well, like how is this and how is that and how is that and how is that. Like that's quite confrontational. It's quite annoying.
That's right. I think it's just that honestly comes down to girls and boys, because with girls, like you feel like the more details you have, the more you ask, it shows how much you care. With males, it's like, look, just lay off.
I can solve my own problems.
That's right. That's right.
You need to be able to recognise though that someone needs to have their space, and if a male feels that it's becoming too much, or they need some time out, then they should say that. How about we have a break, and then I'll speak to you in half an hour or an hour, and just give me some time to cool off. Let me go for a walk, let me do my prayers, let me do this, let me do that, and then come back and have a nice chat.
The Yfactor.
Speaking of prayers and mental health, I know you guys aren't, so like religious authorities on this, but I feel sometimes with the Muslim community, especially practicing Muslims, there's a fine line between, for example, having a mental, like even if it's mild depression, and kind of feeling Islamically low, like you feel like Iman is low, or you don't feel good about yourself, right? So how do you distinguish between like something's going on, I should, for example, like I might be entering depression and I should do something about it, and something like, oh, I'm just not feeling good because Islamically I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, or like, I'm not happy with my current level of Iman?
I think Muhammad might be able to comment on this too, but I think we each have a moral compass, and I think that sort of guides us as to, you know, we feel guilt for a reason, deep guilt, like for example, you know, a friend passing and you wishing that you had been there to save that person is very different to, you know, I should have done my charities, or I should have fasted Ramadan. And you have a moral compass, as I said, that guides you to, you know.
Yep. Well, I think in terms of trying to identify whether you have a mental condition of some sort, there are general guidelines that you know, psychologists use to identify, say, depression or say schizophrenia or bipolar, and it might be a matter of if you're feeling down and it's been going on for quite some time, it's probably just a good idea to talk to someone, whether it's family or friends, or if you prefer to talk to someone who doesn't know you personally, you can talk to your GP and they can help, or your GP and your GP can help. And I'm trying to identify whether it's actually a mental condition of some sort, or whether it's you trying to deal with your current situations.
We can use the so to speak, the Bible of psychologists, which is the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual for Mental Disorders. But as psychologists, we have a professional responsibility to the community. I think not to label people and have them run away with a label and say, oh, I've got depression, I've got bipolar, I've got this, because then they go onto Google and then they start researching these little things.
Yes, and they might have like mild depression, and then they make it out as if it's
they've got severe or chronic depression, or you know, some kind of. You know. So you need to be very careful with your labeling. I personally wouldn't advise my clients that they have a certain, you know, disorder. I think it's just it's up to your professional expertise as well, just to sort of pull them through or guide them through whatever disorder that they have.
The Yfactor.
Speaking of names and labeling, I think it's also very important that people don't label people as that depressed on, or just like anything happens, or just who cares, they're just depressed, or they're just...
That's exactly right. Like, for example, you don't say that someone is cancer, or someone is...
Like, it personifies the illness in the person.
You don't say that. You say... So the diagnostics manual is sort of based on sort of not having people become an illness, but it's characterised by illnesses which describe people.
That's right.
Okay, so you can't say that someone is something, more like the illness sort of describes a bit of that person.
That's right.
You can't take away from a person their character and everything that makes them up.
That's right.
By classifying them as a certain disease.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's what it becomes, like the epitome of that disease becomes that person. And it's
and they shape their lives around this illness, which is detrimental to their health.
Do you guys feel like with words such as, like, for example, oh, who cares, she's just bipolar, when someone's having mood swings or whatever, or just, oh, that person's depressed just when they're having a bad day, does that undermine the seriousness of mental health when medical words are being passed around just generally in conversations?
Well, I think so. I mean, because if you're comfortable with throwing around those words, using them as labels and whatnot, I think you're probably less likely to take it seriously when someone goes up to you and asks for help, and they tell you, "Oh, look, you know, I'm dealing with depression at the moment. You know, do you have any advice, or you need to help me out?" And if you're so used to throwing labels around, you're probably less likely to take them seriously. So I think, there is definitely potential for
Absolutely. It, like what Muhammad said, it's very easy to box people into, you know, oh, you've ticked this, you've ticked that, you've ticked that. Okay, so you're not sleeping right. Oh, okay, so you're not eating right. Oh, okay, you're crying a lot. Oh, you're having emotional breakdowns, you're socially withdrawn, you've got depression. It's so easy to fit people into these little categories, but... like you said, you miss a lot of the information that a client or someone is telling you because you've got these preconceived notions of what they are, and you allow that to sort of cloud your judgment rather than just listen to someone. And that's the basic essential criteria to be a good counsellor and a psychologist, just to listen.
Well, the primary audience of this show is actually young people, right? So what advice do you guys have for young people? And this is two-limbed advice. Number one is to people who are the listeners, right? So, for example, my friend comes up to me and, she or he decides to spill, right? How should you deal with that? And number two is to people that actually have their ups and downs, or they cry a lot or whatever. What should they do about it? So, Fatima?
Okay, so there's some warning signs that you can look out for. Not if someone's just teary because they've had a bad day.
Yep.
That's a normal, one-off type thing.
Yep.
But if they're constantly sort of crying day in, day out, or they're sort of not wanting to go out anymore, and their social circle is sort of dwindling in numbers, and they're just sort of, they're ostracizing themselves from the community, then you know that something might be happening. It's fine to just say, "Are you okay?" Once you obtain some kind of response from that, the person might at first, if it's a male, which is the topic of our conversation, they might say, "Oh, I'm fine, nothing's wrong with me." But a little bit of further prodding, if it reveals something, then there's resources that person can access in the community. Beyond Blue offer a great service. Lifeline, they have amazing volunteers who are trained specifically to deal with anyone who is suicidal, or who's self-harming, or is depressed. There's a lot of resources that they can mail out to people as well. So I would definitely encourage people to access any of those sites, or just phone them up if you need someone to talk to and you feel like you don't want to talk to people that are in your community, because that could be hard as well. You might fear privacy issues, that sort of stuff. So speaking to a stranger sometimes breaks down that boundaries as well.
Yeah, well, I think first off, it's important, especially for men, to understand that, look, it's okay if you're feeling sad. That's natural. You don't always have to put a strong face to everyone, to your friends, to your family. Life is stress. There's ups and downs, and it's natural for you to feel sad when you're at a tougher part of your life. And I think a lot of men tend to think that friends will judge them, say, as someone who's weak or someone who can't really deal with things if you ask your friend for help and seek sort of advice or comfort. But generally speaking, from my own experiences, that's not the case. Assuming that your friends are actually good friends, they're more than happy to help, and it actually feels quite good when a friend asks for help from you, because it shows that they trust you enough to ask them for help. I guess more generally, for someone who is being asked for help, I think a lot of the time people just want someone to validate their emotions, so to say to them that, okay, yeah, it's fine for you to feel sad, to feel disappointed, to feel stressed, because because your job's tough, or because things at school are quite difficult, because your teacher's picking on you. It's not sort of, I don't think it's a good idea to just tell your friend that, look, okay, it's normal for you to feel that way. I understand where you're coming from, and if you do have advice to help your friend get through these tough times, go ahead. But again, they don't have to accept your advice, and they don't really have to agree with you. At the end of the day, it's their choice to accept what you say, and they might have many people that they're asking advice from.
So don't bully them into accepting it, and then you're making the condition worse. Yeah,
exactly. So don't force them into taking up your advice. Give them options, and just be there to support them and to give them comfort in times when things are difficult for them.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, guys. That was very, very enlightening. Fatima's actually brought in some resources. So if you do want to drop past and pick them up, you can come to the studio on Howden Street, Lakemba, and you can pick them up. Also, she will be posting some links on our Facebook page. And I'd love to take this discussion from this physical space to the virtual world, right? So, guys, to our listeners, I know we're not live yet, so you can't even ring and ask them questions. But through our Facebook page, if you do have any questions that you would like to direct at Muhummed or at Fatima, please get on the Facebook page and let us know your thoughts. And also, both of you feel feel free to interact with our listeners through the page. And as Fatima mentioned, there are many registered organisations that are out there to help you, so don't be afraid to seek advice. Any concluding words, guys?
Again, I just like to reiterate that it's okay to feel good and feel bad. Ups and downs are part and parcel of life, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask help from people around you, because that's what they're there for, family, friends, and whoever else is around you.
Absolutely, and males, don't be afraid to approach females.
That's it. We actually care. We do. Excellent. Thank you so much, guys, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The Yfactor.